Hey everyone, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here. If you're already subscribed and you haven't clicked that bell, be sure to do that, otherwise YouTube won't tell you that I posted anything. If you haven't subscribed, well, watch this video and maybe consider subscribing if you like it. Legendary is a first-person shooter released in 2009. Is it as bad as everyone says? No, this game is great! Okay, seriously, I've never understood the reviews to Legendary. I actually played this game on launch when it came out back in 2009, and I was greatly amused by it. After I beat the game, I thought it was a good game, not Game of the Year by any means, but definitely a good one I enjoyed, went to see what the review said, and found this. What? This game is the example I use whenever I talk about being baffled by reviews. I don't understand them at all. How is this game a 4 out of 10? To make matters worse, everyone talks about how bad this game is, whereas vast majority of people have never played it. They just saw the reviews saying this game is awful, so it must be an awful game, even though they haven't played the game, so they don't really have any real valid opinion about it. As far as I'm concerned, you have to put a considerable amount of time into a game before you really know whether it's good or bad. People I know that played this game without looking at reviews had the same response I did when they heard this game was critically panned. Complete surprise, because really, what about this game gives it a 2 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10? But enough ranting, let me actually go into the game and explain what I mean and why I actually found this game to be a good game, not an awful one. Legendary came out on PC, Xbox 360, and PS3. The PC version isn't that bad either. There are a lot more options I would like to have, but for the most part you can install the game and just play. But I would recommend you to make a few changes. For starters, mouse smoothing is turned on by default, which means you have mouse acceleration. If you want to turn this off, you just need to change mouse smoothing from true to false in an INI file, and that's all you have to do. Very easy stuff. The next thing is that this game has really bad screen tearing and there's no way to turn VSync on in-game, so I'd recommend turning that on in your NVIDIA control panel or the AMD equivalent. This is where a few people complain that VSync will mess up their aim and add input delay, but in this game I didn't really notice it if it was turned on in my NVIDIA control panel, and trust me, the screen tearing is bad, so you'll want it turned on. The last thing I would recommend you do is to download a fix for the FOV, as there's no FOV slider in-game. This fix is a lot easier than other shooters though. It's just an exe file that runs while you're playing the game. You type in what FOV you want, you click set, and then you're good to go. I would have liked to see an FOV slider in-game, but this literally is the next best thing. Raising the FOV doesn't seem to cause any problems either. The game just kind of works even at 101. The only real problem with raising your FOV is that the weapon FOV does not scale with raising your FOV, which is a problem I've seen in games that do have FOV sliders. For example, in Far Cry 3, no matter how high you raise the FOV, the weapon FOV is still made for an FOV of 55. Which means guns are really scrunched up in your face and it just looks really confusing and annoying. Legendary isn't quite as bad as Far Cry 3 in this regard, and you will quickly not notice it, but it's definitely there. I did a few optional things in the NVIDIA control panel, like maxing out anti-aliasing, so if the game looks smoother in this video than it does for you, that'd be why. You can all do this stuff for yourself, it's really easy stuff, and I would recommend you do it to get your best experience. But aside from turning off mouse acceleration, really all that's optional. The game just kind of works as intended. So on a technical level, this game just runs and does what it's expected to do and doesn't crash. So how's the game itself then? This game's premise is very simple. You are hired by someone who dupes you into opening Pandora's box. In the process of opening Pandora's box, you get stabbed in the hand by the box itself, putting a weird marking on your hand. This marking has numerous gameplay mechanics in-game. It allows you to pick up animus energy. This energy can be used to heal yourself, put out a blast, or put the energy into certain things in the map that you need to use. It's an interesting health mechanic that's definitely better than just having regenerating health or constantly scrounging around for medkits. It's extra resource management without micromanaging or being annoying. As you can imagine, when you open Pandora's box, all hell breaks loose and monsters are released throughout the world. This game, however, takes place in primarily New York and London. These settings do give a great backdrop, however. Within the first 15 minutes of the game, you find yourself strolling through downtown New York with griffins throwing people across the street and literally picking up cop cars. How is that not awesome? Well, the person that duped you into opening Pandora's box assumed that the box would kill you when you open it, and when it didn't, he sent out people to kill you. So you're not just fighting monsters, you're also fighting your sort of generic enemies that shoot at you with guns, which I guess is fine for variety, but they're definitely not more interesting than the monsters trying to kill you instead. The game's plot becomes you trying to stop these monsters while also trying to figure out why the person wanted you to open up Pandora's box to begin with. His motivation is pretty straightforward and cliche. He wanted to open the box to control the monsters, to control the world. And you know what, I'm fine with it. It's cliche, but how often do you get this in video games? We've seen mythical animals in plenty of games before, but finding mythical animals in your current time period in games is somewhat difficult. Well, the final boss of the game becomes you trying to stop this person at the top of a tower in a machine, and yeah, they kind of blatantly ripped off Half-Life 2 here, but whatever. This final boss is awful, but that's for gameplay reasons that I'll talk about later. You do stop this person, and he randomly dies in a hilariously over-the-top way by the monsters like everyone else in this game, and I'm not complaining, this is awesome. But in the process of stopping this person, Pandora's box was broken, meaning you can't seal the monsters back inside. The good news is, one of the purposes of that weird mark on your hand is to help build another box. And instead of letting you cooperate like you had been doing the entire game, they decide to use force. Yeah, this doesn't work out. The protagonist you're playing as escapes, and it is heavily implied that you're now controlling the creatures, and then the game ends. Are you kidding me? The game ends like that? What a ridiculous cliffhanger. Sure, you killed your main enemy boss man, but there's problems still everywhere and nothing else has been resolved. I think it was supposed to set up a sequel where you're controlling all the mythical animals, which would have been fucking awesome, but we're never gonna get that because the people that made this game went out of business. Legendary was made by a developer called Spark Unlimited. Their highest received game was Call of Duty Finest Hour. Yes, they made a Call of Duty game, and it got 73% on Metacritic, which is, not bad. Not great, but not bad. The next two games they released were Turning Point Fall of Liberty, a notoriously bad game, and Legendary, which got notoriously bad reviews. After this, they made Lost Planet 3, this was the same people, and a Ninja Gaiden spin-off called Ninja Gaiden Z. That was the last game they ever made, and then they went out of business. In all reality, our hopes of getting a Legendary sequel were completely smashed in 2008 when the game was critically panned, so of course they weren't going to release another one. Then again, I guess that never stopped them from making a Homefront sequel, so who knows. Graphically, this game is okay. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it, to be completely honest. It just looks like a late 2000s first-person shooter. It doesn't look awful, it doesn't look great, it does what it's supposed to do, although I would have liked to see a lot more options. The video settings are really limited, and although you can change things manually in INI files and through your NVIDIA control panel, really that stuff should be in-game. It is still there, and the game still does look fine though, so take that as you want. I remember one of the big things they toted about with this game was that enemies would get ripped apart as you put more bullets into them. You're fighting mythical creatures that don't have hit scan weapons, so of course you're going to need to shoot them a bit more than your regular first-person shooter enemies. So why not make them kind of get ripped apart as you shoot them? Well, this was really basic and it was nice that it was there, but it wasn't anything to write home about. It certainly isn't anything like the gore in, say, Killing Floor 2, but again, this is 2009, so still, that never stopped anyone from doing something like this before. I mean, Soldier of Fortune is a great example. So far, nothing about the game I've talked about has been bad, so it has to be the gameplay, right? That must be why it got all the negative reviews. Well, no, not really. For the most part, the basics of this game is stuff you've seen before. Guns shoot, they have ADS, you can iron sight, you reload. I mean, you've played a shooter before, you know what you're looking at. The one complaint I do have is that when you ADS, it zooms in a little bit too far, and it doesn't seem to scale your sensitivity with you zooming, so it's a little too sensitive. But it's not unplayable. I mean, again, this is a first-person shooter. You've played a first-person shooter before. It doesn't do anything that really stands out in this regard. And the same thing applies to all the human enemies trying to kill you. They're just human NPCs with hit-scan guns. You've shot at these before. They don't take a lot of bullets to kill, so thankfully they're not bullet spongy, but they're pretty generic. Thankfully, most of the time is not going to be spent shooting at these enemies. It's going to be spent shooting at the mythical creatures, which really is the highlight of this game. Again, you're in downtown New York with griffins flying everywhere trying to murder people. This is just an amazing premise on its own. I've played this game a good 4 times or so, and I'm still greatly amused by the chaos surrounding me whenever I play this game. And there's not like there's a limited amount of mythical creatures, there's a good amount of them. You have the giant griffins I mentioned earlier, which are going to be a big threat to you. Obviously, they're griffins that are bigger than your fucking car. But then you have other creatures like 2 different variations of a werewolf, which the lesser version looks more like a rat to me, but then the alpha werewolf just sort of looks like a werewolf, so take that as you will. You have a fire drake which turns into fucking Sonic and rolls at you and then breathes fire at you. You have a giant golem running around downtown New York destroying buildings. And then you have these flying demon pixie fucks which can be incredibly annoying. These enemies are called Nari, and I have a huge love-hate relationship with them because some of the things they do are really amusing. These enemies love to possess things around you, and this can lead to really amusing set pieces like them possessing a soda machine and trying to kill you by launching soda cans at you, or locking you into an enclosed space and spinning up a fan, pulling you towards it, which would tear you to shreds. Stuff like this is great, but at the same time, their basic attack is them just being a tiny creature flying around you that you can't attack normally. You have to use your Animus Blast, which allows you to shoot them, and I mean, in what game has a tiny flying enemy not been incredibly annoying when it's trying to peck at you? But I digress, these enemies add a lot of variety into this game and are genuinely interesting. Which, I mean, I guess that's expected, they're mythical creatures, they have a big backstory to them already. In fact, you can just search for hours just looking at the backstory for most of these enemies because, I mean, again, if you're into mythology, you're probably already going to know a lot about them. It is interesting to go to the Legendary Wiki to see what they say about them specifically. Like, they'll give you a background and everything, but the part I find more interesting is that they'll give you a danger level and a status of enemies. For example, with the Griffin, the danger level is high and the status is dangerous. With the Fire Drake, the danger level is low and the status is weak. With the Golem, the danger level is you're dead and the status is you're dead. And with the Nari, the danger level is low and the status is annoying. Which, I mean, yeah, that's accurate. And the game doesn't throw all these monsters at you at once. It continuously introduces new monsters to you throughout the game. In fact, you won't fight your first Minotaur until about 75% of the way through the game, and at that point, it serves as a mini-boss. This game also has traditional bosses like, say, the Golem attacking downtown New York City, or a Kraken attacking Parliament in London, and you can start to see why I really like this game. How is that not awesome? The premise alone is enough to keep my attention, but the actual gameplay itself is not bad. It's not groundbreaking or anything new, but it's not a 4 out of 10. I genuinely don't get it. The only real complaint I had with this game is the final boss. Now, this game has no quick saving, but the checkpoints are usually not too bad, with the exception of the final boss, which then they are fucking awful. Before I talk about the final boss, I should probably talk about the elevator before the final boss, because this thing notoriously likes to bug out on you. In my case, every single time I played it, I've fallen through the floor on the first time, which isn't really that big of a deal because you get a checkpoint just before the elevator, and then the next time I reload and walk into the elevator, it works perfectly fine. People like to say this is a game-ending bug, but in my case, as I mentioned, it only happens the first time and then works fine after I load, so the bug is there, but it's not going to make the game unbeatable. Anyway, once you get to the final boss, it is, like I said, almost a rip-off of Half-Life 2, just different. You have an enemy boss with a machine. The whole point of the machine is to control the monsters, and then your whole goal is to destroy this machine, and the whole time the person is yelling at you saying, "You're a fool, you don't know what you're doing." Does this sound familiar to you? Yeah, it's pretty much Dr. Breen. With that said, really only the premise is the same. What you have to do is very different. You have to hack into 3 generator type things, which will then let your ally overload them, which makes them explode, and after this point you will then have to overload the main system with animus energy, which will make it explode, thus ending the game. The problem is there's no checkpoints throughout any of this, so if you overload the 3rd system and then go to the main final one and die, well, you have to do it all over again. And the whole time you're doing this, enemies are constantly walking out at you and werewolves are attacking you from the other side. The werewolves are needed because that's how you get animus energy, but at the same time, why are there so many enemies and why are there not checkpoints in between each system that I've destroyed? That's fucking stupid. If you have a final boss with multiple goals, give me some damn checkpoints. This is the only thing that kills this final boss, but damn does it make it really annoying. Get away from me.
Wow, that fucking killed me. Bullshit. Watch it make me do that all over again.
Okay, that's as angry as I can get at this game. It's honestly not a bad game, and I'm still completely baffled where these reviews came from. Do you want a game where you shoot monsters for only $2? Hell yeah you do, go buy this game, it's not bad. The only real complaint I have about this game is that it's a little bit shorter than it should be. It'll last you around 5 hours instead of the usual 7, but it's not like it's only 2 or 3, it's 5. We've played 5-hour games before that were not bad and they didn't get reviews this bad either. This game also did have multiplayer, but it ran on GameSpy servers so it's shut down. You can play it through LAN for whatever reason, but the multiplayer was never really the draw of this game. It was shooting mythological creatures in the campaign. But that's all I really have to say about Legendary. This is the prime example I use for whenever I talk about how much I hate critics. Keep in mind, my channel is not supposed to be a review channel. This is more or less me just rambling about games. I'm not really attaching an arbitrary score to a game to say, look, this game's bad, you should avoid it. My opinion has always been, if a game interests you, play the game. Even if you don't like it, you wouldn't have known whether you liked it or not if you didn't get that experience. And I can never regret that. If I played this game and it ended up being the worst thing in the world, well, I knew because I played the game, not because I listened to someone else's opinion. And I'm sure all of you have at least looked at reviews in the past and gone, wow, this person's a fucking idiot. How are you reviewing games? I disagree with all of this. In the end of the day, opinions are going to be opinions, and a critic's opinion is not really any better than your opinion. That said, this game is great. If you disagree, your opinion's wrong. I'm sure a few people won't get angry at that statement, not realizing it's sarcasm, because there's always those people in the comments. Anyway, this game was a highly requested game that I review on my channel, and I've always knew about it, and I always did want to make a video of it, so I'm finally getting around to it. A lot of you came over and watched me over on Twitch when I was streaming, so if you want to see me stream games in the future, my Twitch is twitch.tv/Jarek4GamingDragon. It is a lot of fun to talk to you you guys while I'm streaming. I can't really do that over here on YouTube, so if you want to go help me out, go give a follow on Twitch, and if you want to help me out farther, then maybe subscribe on Twitch or go check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Derek4. Those of you on Patreon and Twitch subs will get to see my videos a day ahead of time, so check that out. Thank all of you for watching, and I will see you on Twitch or for the next video.